Well, welcome everyone. It's a minute or so after the top of the hour, and I'd like to welcome you all to CWR Academy and this webinar, which is Meet Our Sisters Tour. I love that phrase. And it's about the inner workings of a collaborative project that you can do for your congregation, region, or federation. I'm Robert Cogswell. I'm a member of the CWR board, and I'm on the education committee. And as we often do, we'd like to open with just a short prayer before we jump into the rest of the webinar. So bear with me as I share my screen. And you can see what I'm seeing. Okay, loving and gracious God, thank you for this opportunity to meet, connect, learn, and grow through this unique, creative, and dedicated community of CWR. May our time together ignite possibilities and build relationships for the benefit of our missions. Grant that we may have clarity of purpose and experience joy in advancing your good work. Amen. So thank you. And as we get started here, just a few operational things as you've grown accustomed to with these webinars. You should know that you're only viewing and hearing the panelists. There's no grid of faces like we have on Flash Conversations. We encourage you to ask questions. That's very much welcome, but in this case, we're going to save questions toward the end. We'll have our panelists share their thoughts, and there'll be ample time to have conversation. If we do, for some reason, have unanswered questions, these are all CWR members, and we can find them. we can have access to our panelists, so for follow-up questions as needed. But as we go through, if you think of something along the way, go ahead and add something to the chat or the Q&A, and we'll try and address that as we get to the Q&A portion. We are recording, so the session is recorded for later viewing. If you have to duck out or need to recapture something that's been said, you can revisit today's webinar. There's also a toolkit for those of you who have registered, which you'll receive access to. It's password protected. You'll get that a little bit later. So today, I'd like to welcome our panel, all CWR members from the Chicago area, Sister Beth Murphy from the Dominican Sisters of Springfield, Siobhan O'Neill Meluso, who's communications coordinator for the Benedictine Sisters of Chicago, and Tammy Townsend Denny, director of communications for the Sisters of the Holy Family of Nazareth. It's a great team. It's a fantastic panel that we could go to for almost any kind of presentation, but we get to benefit from their creative endeavors today. So please welcome, and Tammy is going to start us off.
Great, thank you so much for that introduction, Rob, and for this opportunity to be part of this this presentation and share a little bit of what we have fondly started to call our labor of love. So I'd like to share with you a little bit about how this project began. Like many great ideas, the Meet Our Sisters tour originated from sitting around a table with other communicators for women religious and beginning to brainstorm ideas for things that we could do for National Vocation Awareness Week. The Chicago CWR regional group wanted to do something together collaboratively, but what were we going to do? So we recognized as a regional group that the congregations, the communities, and the ministries of Catholic sisters in the Chicago area had really deep and rich histories that are reflected not only in what the sisters are doing currently, but also in the heritage rooms and the historic chapels and their convents and monasteries. We were also inspired by what's called Open House Chicago. And if you're not familiar with that, it's a free multi-day event that's hosted by the Chicago Architecture Center. And it's where visitors can tour historic buildings across Chicago. So our regional group thought, why not do something similar for our sisters and invite people in to see the beauty of the work that the sisters have done and are doing. We also realized we needed some sort of guidebook to help people find where our sisters are. And that's where we turn to tourism, because you may be familiar that some tourism programs offer a passport of sorts that serves as a guide to lead you from one place to another. So we let that kind of inspire us a little bit. We recognize that we are not vocation directors. We are communicators. Our purpose for Meet Our Sisters was not to create a vocation event, even though we're doing this during National Vocation Awareness Week, but rather we wanted to create a culture of vocations. We wanted people to be aware that Catholic sisters are still present and thriving in Chicagoland. And we wanted to give everyone an opportunity to learn about what sisters have done and are doing in a very tangible way. To do this, we ask ourselves, how do we empower as many people as possible to be ambassadors for religious life, to give them the knowledge that they need to speak about the great things that sisters do? And out of that, the Meet Our Sisters tour was born. What we envisioned was an umbrella type event that allowed each congregation, community, or ministry to define for themselves and also to plan for themselves how best to invite the people in their area to visit the beautiful chapels, the historic heritage rooms, or the work of their ministries. We were also very careful as we were creating this program to define what Meet Our Sisters is not, and to be sure to set very realistic expectations for ourselves, for our leadership teams, and for our vocation teams. So we were very clear from the beginning that this is not a vocation event that is limited to only single young women who are discerning a vocation. It's not a discernment retreat. And it's not an event that's going to attract hundreds of people to our doors. Again, going back to our purpose, we wanted to raise awareness. It's also not an event that is limited to only those who are still accepting vocations. We recognize that the stories of congregations and communities that are no longer accepting vocations can be just as inspiring in the culture of vocations as those who are still accepting young women who are discerning. So what is Meet Our Sisters? It's a collaborative campaign, again, to raise awareness about Catholic sisters or other vocations in your area. It's a way of building relationships. And it's also an opportunity to create ambassadors for religious life. So with that, I would like to introduce Siobhan, who is going to explain a bit more about how we implemented all of this. Siobhan?
Thanks, Tammy. So what it is, and now how to do it. So thank you again for joining us and for learning about this wonderful project we've had the joy of developing from its inception. And so how to do it, really? Well, first decide that you want to do it and then kind of work backwards. So obviously you want to give yourself some time to plan. We recommend, 6 to 9 months to plan and promote. And you want to try to give yourself an idea of this in the sense of what Tammy was saying. It's kind of an event within an event. So you have the entire Meet Our Sisters tour, which is the collaborative part, but then you want to have your own mini event that is the tour stop on the Meet Our Sisters tour. So you want to make sure that you're accounting for both ideas and working together to sort of empower your participants with various ideas. So starting at the very beginning, you want one contact person. For the Chicago regional group, I was that person. And so I developed a dedicated email address for all things Meet Our Sisters tour. And then from the Gmail address, we have a Google form to share with participants of what they would like to do. So then they fill it out, the normal things in a Google form, a registration form, their name, their contact details, what they're going to do, what day of the week on the Meet Our Sisters tour that they are planning an event, so that we can sort of account and juggle the various things that are happening during National Vocational Awareness Week, which is the week that we have been doing Meet Our Sisters tour. And here is an image of our Google form. And also on the Meet Our Sisters tour, like was said, you'll be shared these details after the webinar, and Sister Beth, after I speak, will give a little bit more about each of these things. But you need collateral, so you will need a passport. We have a social media kit for you as well to help you promote on your social media platforms. A web page is important to have, a dedicated web page for all the information of the tour. You want to advertise through your local parishes, so we'll give you some bulletin insert verbiage and best practices for that. We also implemented a press release our second year of doing this, and so we will have that for you as well. So all of these items are important for planning this collaborative project, and we are sharing that with you, of course. But what does it cost? Your budget can be low or no. You don't have to pay for anything, really. We're giving it to you. All of these things are just wonderful ways that you already do your job to promote other events, and so these toolkits will help you continue that. So when we first started the Meet Our Sisters tour, that was in 2019, way back when, right? And it was in person. So we were able to have physical stops on the tour. And so a fun thing that we did to help promote that was to develop a map. And so we utilized Google Maps and physically plotted out the different stops in the Chicago area, and I used the everyone's logo to be part of the stop. And so this image is Google Maps in InDesign, and then this is the actual Google Maps as well. So Google Maps allows you to plot in physical addresses to help you. And it's just a nice little thing for people to utilize, and it's visual. So, so that's a fun thing. So that was 2019. Then 2020, we all know what happened. It was an extraordinary year, right? And so we're very much used to doing things online and being very creative. And so we continued that creativity with the Meet Our Sisters tour. We didn't want to have the tour be a one and done, you know, a one hit only. So we decided to put our thinking caps on again and figure out how we could still do a tour virtually. So we now have rosaries for detained folks organized by sisters during the Meet Our Sisters tour. We have Zoom chats hosted by sisters during the Meet Our Sisters tour. And even us, the Benedictine sisters, we premiered a video each day of the Meet Our Sisters tour, highlighting a different area of our nearly 100-year-old chapel. And so we premiered those on YouTube, and we got great views. And it was a wonderful way to just bring everyone in without bringing them in, you know, because that was 2020. And so while we're planning for this year, currently, we're doing it again. We're trying to figure out how to do a hybrid situation, because obviously it's very easy for us to do virtual. Some monasteries or congregations may or may not be open, so we're going to, again, try to be creative and do a hybrid situation where some folks, the Meet Our Sisters tour stop may be in person, some may be online, or both. So it just depends. I mean, not only is it for the safety of our sisters, but sometimes our participants also aren't as comfortable attending in person. So we want to be conscious of that. So we are underway with our plans. And so we are continuing to remember this because, again, this is sort of a new way of doing it. So each year we've adapted to what's been happening. And so this year, it's exciting though. We're going to continue to remember, like Tammy said, to lower our expectations. And the goal of the campaign is awareness. And so if people are talking about the Meet Our Sisters tour, if they're talking about your virtual chapel tour, your heritage room virtual tour, then the job has been done. And with that though, we have experienced some great traffic on our social media channels from our participants. So here are some of the, here's a graphic from the Adrian Dominicans. And I will note, the Adrian Dominicans are based in Adrian, Michigan, and they are a part of the Chicago regional group Meet Our Sisters tour. Because Chicago is this metropolitan area, there's lots of congregations that have started here and have their foundations here, but there are many other congregations and communities that serve in this city. So think about that when you're planning your tour, whether you have a similar situation like that. You know, open your borders in a way, you know, think of other congregations that might be serving in your area if you choose to do it as a regional area like we did, a geographic region. So back to our analytics, the great thing about this awareness campaign is the reach was wonderful, from Facebook to Instagram to Twitter. And even the Archdiocese of Chicago retweeted the Adrian Dominicans post about the Meet Our Sisters tour back in 2019. So once you get going, I'm telling you, people will want to know what's happening. This is such an exciting project. And so to tell you a little bit more about the network and tools, the nitty-gritty, I'm going to hand it off to Sister Beth to continue on. So Sister Beth, take it away.
Thanks, Siobhan. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. You're going to want to access as many of the tools that you have to work with on a regular basis for this project as well. And I'm not going to talk about all of those, just a few words. You know, human beings are really your best tool. The more people you can get engaged with this, the more successful it will be. And you've got to know the communications channels that work best, especially for your own sisters and associates, because they're the ones that you're going to want to engage to help promote the event, if you can possibly do that. In my community, the two best tools that I have for reaching all those people is the bulletin board in the dining room at the Mother House and the listserv that we use. We have one for sisters and one for associates. And between those two tools, I'm able to mobilize about 500 people. So don't overlook those simpler methods of communication when you're doing your communication plan. Siobhan mentioned the website as an important stopover, and it really is. It also becomes an historical artifact once it's over and something that people can look at afterward. For us, CWR hosted the landing page for this. It's going to depend on how you are configuring the tour. We're assuming that it won't just be your own congregation, but that you may work with congregations who minister in the same metropolitan area or rural area. So you'll have to decide, you know, how you're going to work that, but having the landing page is really important. The other thing that you want to remember is to engage in social media, get your ambassadors to help spread the word. And again, I used our listserv to extend that invitation to our sisters and associates to share the things that were in our social media posts and on our website. But they're not always the most media savvy people. So they might know how to send an email, even if they can't share on Facebook, right? So I made it easy for our sisters and associates by putting links to information in an email, sending that to them, and explaining that all they needed to do was hit forward and then type in the toolbox the email addresses of all of their friends and family that they wanted to share it with. And, you know, especially our elder sisters who have mastered email, they love to know that they're able to do something to help. So again, don't forget, that that's a part of it. And then, you know, if they are a little bit more savvy, you can attach social media images or just send them links to what you already have up and invite them to share. Okay, and Siobhan mentioned the news releases in the bulletins too. You don't necessarily have to do that. It really does depend on your context. In Chicago, it made sense because it's really hard to capture free media there. But my congregation is based in central Illinois, which is largely a rural community. And so to promote the events that were virtual last year, we did not participate in 2019. We did in 2020. And because they were virtual events, it was easy enough for us to do that. Take into consideration that market that you're looking for. And also do not discount the small, like really hyper local media. Some of those, especially in our current media environment, are the most effective ways to reach people. Rural weekly newspapers, what do you call those things? Like those neighborhood websites, you know, where people are sharing, in my experience, mostly gossip. But those are all good ways if they exist in the communities where your sisters are. Focus on the places where your congregation or congregations already have influence. And then a really important tool turned out for me personally to be the diocesan, what they call parish notes. They send out, I think every other week, they send a message to every parish. And one of the tabs in that, I believe they use Flocknote, one of the tabs that they provide is bulletin announcements. That has been a lifesaver for me, and it was for this event too. I do not have to try to remember or collect every single parish's, you know, bulletin editor's email address. It goes to the diocese, they send it out, and, you know, it makes it easier to broadcast the message. Sometimes you need, it depends on how big the diocese is. You really need a good relationship with the person who's in charge of that, because often the dioceses will guard that with their life. You know, they're very picky about what they actually allow there. So don't neglect to build that relationship if you think it will be worthwhile to you. I think one of the things that tickled me most is, you know, you want to give the parish bulletins everything, not just the written text, but also send the artwork along. They don't always use it, but they might. And little tiny Tuscola, Illinois, none of you have probably ever heard of it. They actually printed the picture of the Chicago bean in their bulletin. I think there's an image of that. I'm not sure if it's there or not. Siobhan, is there a copy? Yep, there it is. So this is the Sunday bulletin for Tuscola, Illinois. And I venture to say that there's an awful lot of people in Tuscola who've never been to Chicago, but there you go. And so that's really what Siobhan meant when she said this is an awareness raising event. Nobody from Tuscola participated in the event that I know of, but this is just another reminder to people that Catholic sisters still exist and they're still doing important work. Okay. The next thing that you're going to see is a page from the passport, and you'll get the PDF of this whole thing. There was one page for every group that participated, and it just made it easy for people to see the scope of the whole project and to choose which events they wanted to attend. And then once it's all over, you are not done. You want to assume that if you've done all that work, you have been successful. We had exactly 1.5 persons attend our virtual events. And I say half because one guest that came in left halfway through. So, and I should say these were guests that were not Dominican Sisters of Springfield or associates. There were a few of our sisters and associates on the call, but in terms of new people, 1.5 we say, all right. But that was not at all wasted. That was very important because of all of the buzz that it created in social media and in parish bulletins. And because of what you can do with the products after it's over. We held 2 virtual sessions. We recorded both of them. One was amazing. And I think that's on the next slide if you want to go to that one for me, Siobhan. Yeah, Okay, so there's the Google search. But this event at our literacy center in Aurora, even though there was only one guest, the sisters did a phenomenal job. And we recorded that. And then we edited down that recording and produced this video that still continues to attract attention for our ministry. The other event, we had all kinds of technical problems and the speaker was not as polished as we would like. So we chose not to share that video, but we took the content that she provided and did this blog post that you see there. And that's still on our website and still attracting attention. So you can repurpose everything. Nothing of it is wasted. And it turned out to be a great thing for us to do. I guess we're ready for questions, huh?
Right. I was just looking if there's anything in the Q&A or chat. Brian has posted a few links that have been brought up through the conversation, through the presentation that you can see. And I've been jotting some notes down as you've been talking, and I have a lot of questions, but I'm looking for any attendees if they have any, but I can get started maybe with, can you expand a little bit about attendance? Like, what do you usually see on attendance, both virtual and the in-person one?
And actually, if I can chime in on this, Rob, I will, because at our in-person event, that very first year, that 2019, we had 0 people show up. Not unexpected. We had a very limited amount of time that that the convent was open. It was during the week, during daytime hours, so it didn't really surprise us. However, when we went virtual in 2020, we had quite a few more participants. The one that, similar story to what Sister Beth had said, the one that was most meaningful was we had a 9-year-old girl on the call who was on with her mom, and she was so interested in Catholic Sisters and what is it about, and had a list of questions. And our sisters had been so generous to be a part of it. So we had different sisters at various levels of formation. So this little 9-year-old girl had this captive audience to answer her questions, everything from those who are postulants through those who have been in religious life for many years. So while it was a small online gathering, as Sister Beth was saying, I think there was something very deeply meaningful and perhaps changed a life for that little 9-year-old.
There's a question coming in about for the in-person event, given numbers of attendees, I'm sorry, I'm reading a separate question here. Would you recommend a virtual event over an in-person event, given your numbers of attendees for the venues?
I think that's really what we're going to explore this year. We started to talk about it in developing this hybrid situation. I know what has worked for us during the pandemic, similar to what you all are experiencing, a lot more attendance virtually, surprisingly. So I know for our own congregation, the Benedictine Sisters of Chicago, we're going to talk about offering maybe 2 things, maybe a virtual and an in-person, so that we kind of have that opportunity for both audiences. But I have a feeling people may want to do the virtual, because if they are able to do it on their own time, especially if it's not like a live situation, they can view it at any point. And so then you get the views. If they have to come at a certain live time, that's almost the same as coming in person. So I'm wondering how that might affect attendance. But I think the most important part is just being creative and offering something a little new and different that is uniquely your community.
If I could jump in on that, I think this year, so I'm in Springfield, Illinois, and these folks that I've been working with are always impressed by our Jubilee farm. They know about the farm and they know it's there. So I think that this year, our farm is in a good position to actually host a live event at the farm. And so I think that that will be what we try to do. But I think then we will, like Siobhan, do virtual and kind of non-synchronous. So we have a pretty nice, about 20-minute tour of our chapel. And it's a video that we've had for several years. We may use that one and just re-promote it as an online event.
All right, you may see in the Q&A that Emily has asked what you would recommend if your congregation is spread out across different states.
That is a perfect recipe, Emily. That is awesome. We were thinking about this when offering this webinar, is that this would be great for an international congregation or a congregation that has locations in different spots. And so then you can offer a map of all of your congregational spots, a mother house, a ministry center, etc. And that's part of the tour stop. And you can offer different things at those different locations. It's perfect for you, Emily.
And if I could piggyback on that, because I work for a congregation that has sisters in seven different states, even though I'm part of the Chicago regional group and live in this area. So while our focus was Chicago, that little girl example that I gave you, she was actually connecting from Texas, because our vocation director is actually based out of Texas. So we're a part of the virtual environment allowed us actually to expand our audience a little bit further, because now we could market this to those who are in those other states where our sisters serve. So it is very applicable to multi-state, multi-nation applications.
Okay, well, here's another one coming in from Joanne. This could be also put together for charism families of congregations. Any thoughts? So like federations, Joanne, I presume you're referring to?
Yes, like the Benedictine communities across the United States, or the Sisters of St. Joseph across the United States. This would be a fantastic way to commemorate, especially if your federation has a great anniversary coming up, like our federation, the St. Scholastica Federation, is celebrating 100 years next year. So that would be a wonderful way to do it. And I might just answer one question in the chat there. This Meet Our Sisters tour, you know, like we said, is not a vocation event, but certainly you can customize it for that if that's really what you think is best. But it works well as an awareness campaign, and it is similar yet different than Catholic Sisters Week. However, you could utilize it during Catholic Sisters Week. We chose National Vocation Awareness Week in the Chicago region because we were just trying to think of something that we could collaborate on, and what time of year didn't seem to have much going on. And so that's why we kind of covertly did the awareness campaign during National Vocation Awareness Week. So certainly this is a tool that can be used any week. It could accompany an anniversary of your congregation as well. I mean, there's lots of ways to do this and use it.
How about another question is, how do you suggest getting sisters support for the tour? How have you engaged your congregations with this?
May I? It's very important to do that early and to be clear with your expectations for the sisters and the associates in your community. Tell them what you're asking them to commit to. Answer any objections that they might have or challenges that they think they're facing. And that really works miracles to set them at ease and to know that they're going to have your support all the way through the event. And that's why you want to be starting 6 to 9 months out, right? Because you have time to build that interest within the congregation. We have a model of collaboration in our community that we call the Planning Collaborative, and we've been using it for about a year now. It's really successful. So about every 6 to 8 weeks, the communications staff sits around a table with people who are responsible largely for all of the programming that happens in the congregation in every area. And that has worked wonders for us in helping us understand each other's needs and enabling the communications office to be of better support. So when you work in that kind of mutual setting, it makes pulling something like this off a whole lot easier and frankly, a lot more fun. I hope I
agree.
answered your question.
You did a great job, Sister Beth. When we introduced this in 2019, everything was new. So in presenting it to our sisters in each of our participating congregations, of course, there was a little confusion and all of that. But at the end of the day, they realized, okay, we're just sort of bringing people in and we're sharing who we are. So that's kind of what it is. And that's how I sort of prefaced it to our sisters when we were able to bring people in 2019. And ultimately, similar to Tammy, we had 0 participants. However, it was such a great buzz, even with the sisters. They were so excited to be a part of something with these other congregations because, you know, they have friends with the BVMs, they have friends with the Dominicans, they have friends in Des Plaines with Tammy's community and all of that. And so it was just kind of a great way for them to feel a part of something too. So that was a great buy-in. But again, it was, you know, we gave them as much time as we could and sort of eased their worry if there was any. And obviously we're providing all the materials. So we're just asking them to show up at a certain time to welcome people.
And if I could add one more thing to that, my intuition is that this fall, we will have more people attending in person. I think that there's a hunger that exists among people now to really connect in person. And so barring some disaster, you know, anything can change, but I really think that people are going to want to make the trip to the mother house or to the farm or, you know, to the ministry site that your congregation has. And I think you'll find it successful. I hope.
Can you share what some of the events are at a tour stop, the in-person ones? Like someone comes by and what do they do? I imagine it varies between sites, but can you offer some examples?
It absolutely does, and that's the beauty of this, is that everyone can do their own thing. To do that event that speaks to that congregation or ministry. For example, for us, we were just open for tours of the Heritage Room and Chapel the first year. The second year, it was an opportunity to meet sisters at various levels of formation. So those were a couple of the things that we have done. As Siobhan has mentioned, some people did video releases. They waited for this week to do their video premieres and had those. Heritage Room tours are a big part of this, especially for congregations. And I'm thinking of one specifically that the name is escaping me, but they have a beautiful, beautiful Heritage Room. They're no longer accepting vocations, but their Heritage Room is well worth a stop. If you're ever in Chicago, let us know. We'll make sure that you can go there.
And that's the Sisters of St. Casimir.
Thank you, Siobhan.
It's a wonderful heritage room. And some of the other stops on the tour included visiting a literacy center or serving the poor after church, after mass. You know, every personal stop of each congregation is kind of where the creativity comes in, but we have given you some great ideas for you to utilize too. And so whatever it is that you're already doing, think if that would be a great stop idea for your Meet Our Sisters tour. And if you want to begin a Meet Our Sisters tour, which is, you know, what do we do now, is you decide. You know, you decide that you want to do it. You get a couple of people to be your participants. So you have a few participants, or if you have a built-in participants list like Emily or Sister Joanne, that you have different locations, that's how you get going. You start with the desire to do it, and then you have a couple of stops, and then you kind of decide what each of those stops will highlight. So perhaps this stop of your congregation is the mother house, or this stop is your great ministry with the poor, and this stop is your ministry with detention ministry, et cetera, et cetera. And so you kind of just highlight what you're already doing, but you create it as a stop. And so that's how you get going. And then you, you know, have a point person, a dedicated email address, and we recommend using a Google form to collect the information from the participants if they are outside of your congregation. And then just kind of follow along with the passport and the social media kit and just, you know, customize it to what you're doing.
And if I could add on to that a little bit, Siobhan, one of the things that I'd like to point out is that we didn't do print materials. Everything was online. So as we talk about the passport, you might be thinking, if you're familiar with them, you might be thinking of an expensive printed booklet that some tourism agencies do. We didn't do that. We kept it all online. If you chose to print, if that was an easier method, you could print it out and have that available at your location on the tour. But we didn't go to any expenses for creating print material in this.
What would you estimate is the amount of time that you put into putting it together?
We've done the heavy lifting for you. So now all you have to do is kind of have the desire, but really just leaving yourself the period of time for planning is what's important. You could put this together really quickly if you wanted to. You could put this together, you know, within a month, 3 weeks, a week, if you really wanted to. But the idea is that you're starting the process early so that you have some time to develop what you want to do at your spot. You get your sister's buy-in, and then you start reaching out to your press in the area, your bulletin editors, your archdiocesan connections. So that's where the time is needed. But the actual development of what you're going to do, hopefully that doesn't take you too much time either, because you're kind of just highlighting what your congregation is already doing. And so it's just a matter of sort of thinking about what you want to highlight, deciding that that's the stop, and then getting enough participants. So, you know, similar to your budget can be low or no. I mean, the time that you want to or can put into this can be a lot, or it can just be very simple. And that's all that it needs to be. It just, you're showing who you are with a bunch of other stops, and it's going to be wonderful.
This may be in the toolkit also, but as far as the amount of time frame that you've used to promote it, about how much time did you put into promoting it, like leading up to the week?
Sister Beth, do you want to?
Yeah, I think we had about a month's advance notice of things. We have several ways of doing that. So we started in social media. We have an email newsletter that goes to a pretty engaged audience. We gave them a heads up earlier and then little reminders along the way. So it might be a little different for every person, but think about the way you respond to things. If something is more than a month out, you're probably not paying attention to it. So there's probably a sweet spot right around there.
Yeah, and also we wanted to make sure that we got the bulletin inserts to the bulletin editors and the archdiocese a little bit over a month. I think we did 6 weeks because sometimes they have a different schedule, but our own personal communities and congregations, we started about a month out and just kind of did a countdown and a lead up and all of that and getting that buzz going, and it worked really well.
So if there are congregations that would like to implement Meet Our Sisters tour, how do they involve CWR? What's CWR's role?
They should definitely share with us that they're going to do it so that we can help promote it, because this is a wonderful thing to promote. You know, it continues our branding, our brand and our project, and we'd love to highlight that you're doing this. And so you can utilize hashtags Meet Our Sisters Tour and hashtag CWR, and just send us an email that you are planning this so that we can keep a lookout for it, and also maybe invite people if we know someone in your area too. That would be a great way for us to just know that you're doing it, and to also be a resource if you have further questions. And I think Brian just put the email in the chat for you.
Right, right. I was going to just mention that Brian's really been great about putting information in the chat if you've seen that. So there's other websites in there as well. Sister Joanna asks, what if you don't have a professional communications person for planning and filming and recording, etc.? Well, of course, we're going to advocate to get one, right? But
well, that's a great question, because while the optimal thing is to have a professional communicator who can dedicate him or herself to doing this, it's not absolutely necessary, because we're giving you the materials that we've already created that you can drop in your information. Then it's a matter of putting it out in social media if you have social media channels. And like Sister Beth was saying, if you don't have those, then work with your local parishes to get it in the parish bulletins, work with your local newspapers to get it into the local newspapers. And you don't have to do filming or recording for this. It honestly can be as simple as, our sisters are inviting you in for coffee. Come have coffee with us. You don't have to get elaborate. In fact, I would say, err on the side of simplicity, especially the first time. Do things in a simple, grounded manner that you know that you can accommodate.
And don't forget that you might have some resources that you're not thinking of. Keep your associates in mind. If you have schools have resources, whether it's an elementary school, high school, or college. They have resources and people who would very much like to be in partnership with you. So, think a little bit outside the box and see who you can draw on. Maybe you've got a sister with a niece who works at the local radio station. There you go. You can find people who will be very happy that you've asked for their help.
In CWR, all of our members are always here to help too.
Kind of along those lines, if you're part of a tour, there's other participants in the tour, right? So maybe whoever's partnering with you on your tour might be able to help out as well. Okay, Emily asks, when you promoted your event on social media, did you have other organizations share your event?
Well, in our toolkit, we included everybody's social media handles. So we sort of tagged each other. So we were all sort of resharing it and spreading the message very widely. And we share the example that the Archdiocese of Chicago even retweeted the Adrian Dominican's post about the Meet Our Sisters tour. So it's all about tagging and resharing within the group, and hopefully one of those tags gets shared virally, but that's a big ask. Thanks for the question, Emily.
And keep in mind too that many archdioceses have something on their website where you can post events. I know the Archdiocese of Chicago has it, and some others. So ask some questions, see if it's out there. If not, many local newspapers have places that you can post those, and those sometimes are things that the communicators for those organizations will come to gather the information to then push out on social media.
And even Global Sisters Report has a page where you can enter your event details for free, and that'll be on that website. And resources like Vision Vocation Guide, Vision Vocation Network website has a free events module for anyone to upload, and it'll be seen by many people.
We'll do a last call for questions here, but while we maybe wait for another final question or two to come in, I just want to throw an editorial in there in that I think this is a fantastic opportunity. I've always viewed anytime you're meeting someone in public, I call it a connection event, so that matches perfectly with the most platform. And really, that's what we're trying to do as communicators, right? We're connecting with people, and now we're doing it in person and virtually. So really, these connection events are another media channel for us to work in.
Exactly right, Rob. Thank you. And that's kind of where the idea developed. We were like, how can we collaborate as communicators? How can we help our sisters? Look at this. We're connecting the two, what we do best, and highlighting our great communities and congregations. And that's where we wanted to reiterate this idea that it's a wonderful awareness campaign, and the buzz is just phenomenal. It's just a lovely idea that has just, you know, sparked a great fire amongst everybody, and that's why you're here. So thanks everyone for joining us.
It looks like we've captured the questions that are present in people's minds right now, but if anything comes up, we can certainly ask the panelists and circle back to this. And so as we wrap up, I'd like to thank each of you, Siobhan and Tammy and Sister Beth. Thank you for presenting this to us. I can think of so many applications for this, like a heritage tour. We did a video series one time called Good Question. And hey, we could do Good Question live. You know, that would be fantastic. So anyway, it just kind of gets the creative juices flowing. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. I do want to remind people about the early bird deadline for conference is coming up in about a week. So be aware of that. Also want to remind you that the survey and a toolkit will be sent to attendees shortly after the webinar is over. That's part of our practice, only now you get a toolkit as well. We're going to be quiet a little bit. I know we've had a lot of events recently in June, but our next set of Flash Conversations and CWR Academy we're looking at toward the end of August. So we have a little bit of a breather there. And thank you. Look for the webinar recording later. And thank you for joining us today, and have a wonderful week.